Well, good morning. I'm glad to have everybody here with us this morning, and welcome to REMCo's second installment of Ask the Professionals, the first installment by via the web. We have a great panel for you this morning, but before I introduce the panel, let me introduce myself. My name is Marcellus Joyner. I am the supervisor for the Heritage Research Center at the High Point Public Library, also the archivist for the High Point Museum. I am also the co-chair of the illustrious REMCo section of NCLA. Um, before we get before we get into the introductions, let me introduce our illustrious Madam Chair, Jewel Davis. Jewel will be giving us the logistics of our workshop today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that you could make it. So I just want to point out that we're going to be using chat to type in our questions today. We have a list of questions that we can ask, but we want to ensure that you all have time to talk with our panelists. So if you have questions about anything, put them into the chat box.
All righty. Well, let me quickly introduce our illustrious panel. First up, we have Brian Hart, Deputy Director of Libraries at Greensboro, North Carolina Public Libraries. Claudia Aleman, Intern Manager for the Stafford Errol Warren Branch Library of Durham County Libraries. And last but not least, Stephanie Fennell, North Regional Manager for Durham County Libraries. Let's just jump right into the questions and pick the brains of our illustrious panel. So we're going to start off with, well, what we want to know is what inspired you to pursue a career in libraries? And you can jump right in, no order.
I can start if you would like.
Yes.
If that's okay. So one of the reasons why I chose to do library science is basically I was looking for a career change, and I was looking to do something where I could apply all of the skills that I already had. I had worked as a admin assistant for 10 years after my undergraduate degree. I had an undergraduate degree in history, and so I had considered going back to be a history teacher for the public school system, but I needed to be certified. And so once I started looking at the amount of credits that I needed to be certified and what it would take, I decided to just go ahead and pursue the master's. And why not get a master's and possibly still work in the public school system? So that's what inspired me to do the library science degree. And I actually got a job working in the library. And so I kind of did it backwards. A lot of times I think people find themselves in a position where they're working in the library and they decide to pursue the master's degree for library science, but I did it the exact opposite. I decided, I want to try library science, and then got the job as a clerk in the library and just kind of worked my way from there.
My story was a little different. I had a mentor, and I was trying to decide what master's or what I wanted to get my master's in. And I knew that I've always liked helping people and connecting them with things or certain information that they needed. And my mentor was like, well, have you thought about being a librarian? And I'm like, no, I like libraries. I like going to libraries, but I've never thought about being a librarian. So that's how I started thinking about it. And I applied to library school, and I'm glad I did, because I am where I am now. And I like connecting people with the information and resources they need, especially with the Latino population, because sometimes they come from their countries and they think that the library is this institution where you have to pay for, where they don't know that some of the resources that we have are free. And that's another reason why I'm glad where I'm at, because I'm able to reach out to certain demographics that that don't know that our resources are free and available to them and for them.
I'd like to start by thanking both you and Jewel Marcellus for the opportunity to participate and share. I don't know how illustrious I would consider myself, but I appreciate your kind words. As far as why I elected or what inspired me to pursue a career in libraries, similar to Claudia, and I believe Stephanie alluded to this as well. It was really just service to others. I began what I would consider my career in libraries as a volunteer, because that's when I was first introduced to the breadth of services, the extent of services that the library really provided to the community. And so I began as a volunteer in a program with the Richland County Public Library, now known as Richland Library in Columbia, South Carolina, as a volunteer conversation partner in a club that they had called, or a program that they offered to the community titled Let's Speak English. And so the intent of that program was to get to help non-native English speakers become more comfortable with their command of the English language in a atmosphere and an environment that was not judgmental, that was not pretentious, and that didn't necessarily give them formal instruction and test them on it, but made it a comfortable setting where they could really afford to make those errors, make those mistakes on their path to becoming more comfortable and having a firmer grasp of the different nuances with speaking English. And so that to me was just a really good experience, because it kind of shared and exposed me to the fact that libraries are kind of the great equalizer. And so helping these people in the various ways in which they need it is really what drew me to the profession and brought me in deeper and deeper. And so from being a volunteer in my work in that capacity, I was actually extended a part-time position by the branch manager where that program happened weekly. And then from that part-time position, maybe 6 to 8 months later, I applied for what is essentially a de facto circulation manager within that system. They had one at each of the different branch locations, and so I applied for one of those positions. Was extended that opportunity, and then from there moved on to work in some other libraries in various capacities. And so I don't want to jump ahead with any of the questions, but that's why I was inspired or brought to the field because of its emphasis on service to others.
Well, all of us have had journeys from the beginning of our careers up into our current point. So the next question is for the panel is to describe your journey from graduate school to your present position.
So as I was kind of alluding to there at the end of that last question, accepted a position as a circulation manager or library assistant too, was how the system and the governing, the parent organization kind of regarded the position. But my role was that of a circulation manager, in that I developed a circulation and desk schedule, kind of managed and supervised all of the pages, and gave some direction and support to the library assistant ones in that capacity. And so during that time, I actually enrolled in the graduate program at the University of South Carolina. And I really appreciated being able to both practice or put into practice some of the different things that we were discussing in the program. And so whenever possible, I always recommend to current graduate students, that they seek out even volunteer opportunities in library settings if they're not actively or already employed within a library environment, because I think being able to have the head knowledge but then apply it to the actual work environment is instrumental, and certainly was for me. And so after my 3 years employed, beyond the volunteer component, but actually employed with Richland County, I moved to Maryland and accepted a position with the Howard County Library System as a teen instructor and research specialist. That system is, known for, or was known for at the time for their, kind of different approach to library services and using the words that worked for their community to describe the impact that they were having in their community. And so that was the title there. And then from there, transitioned to a youth services and assistant branch manager role with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. And then after a couple of years there, received an internal promotion, managing youth services within a region of Charlotte. And then from there, moved to Middle Georgia Regional Library in Macon, Georgia, where I served as assistant director prior to coming here in Greensboro, where I've been for the last 2 years. And so what I will say, the biggest takeaway, aside from the movement in and of itself, is the exposure to different library system structures and being able to see how each of those library systems learned and were intentional about, not just moved by trends or things that were happening within the library community, but being very intentional about focusing on their local community, because that's what allowed them to thrive in various ways. And so that's a little bit about kind of my journey and the progressive steps that I've taken.
I was going to say, I started as head of circulation for Randolph County, was a smaller library. I was very fortunate because I got the position through networking. The people at the library that were working at the library already knew me. And so when this opportunity came up and they knew that I had finished graduate school, they said, would you like to apply for this job? We know that you're a hard worker. We know that you have good work ethic. So I was very fortunate to fall into that position. Again, it all goes back to what Marcellus was saying with volunteering, and also the fact that I knew these people because I would also visit the library, and it's all about networking too on who you know and to get that library experience. And from Randolph County, I moved on to Durham County, and I've been with Durham County for 7 years now. I started as a reference librarian, moved on to head of reference, and right now I'm interim manager. So moving on with Durham County. I like Durham County, so I think I'm going to stay with Durham County for a while.
So my journey was a lot different from everyone else's. Like I said, by the time I got started, I was already married and had a family and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I started out at North Carolina Central University's Shepherd Library as a clerk. And I enrolled in the master's program at the same exact time. So I started working there in July and I started school in August. And so I kind of worked my way through and got the library experience at the same time. Like I said, I had never worked in a library. So I was working and doing school at the same time. And I just gradually worked my way up. And I got the library assistant's position while I was at North Carolina Central. And then once I graduated, of course, I was looking for a professional position at that time. But while I was at North Carolina Central, I volunteered and worked on different committees. So that was part of my networking, because when we would meet and go out in the community, then that was my way to kind of get a little bit of exposure and to meet different people. So I went from there to Durham Public Schools because I was really trying to feel which direction I wanted to go in. And then I ended up working with Durham County as a adult services librarian. And I've been with Durham County for 11 years, and I enjoy it. So I worked as an adult services librarian, then I got promoted to adult services manager, and now I'm the branch manager. I've been here for a little bit over a year. And one of the things that I found at one point, because I think I saw one of the questions in the chat pop up, is you think some of the positions are lateral positions, which that may be true. But one of the things that I find being in the public library and with the state of North Carolina, there are a lot of different opportunities, because I found myself at one point in time feeling like I wasn't going to be promoted. So I didn't get the opportunities that Brian and Claudia had, but I felt like I had to promote myself. And so once I figured out that that's what I needed to do, then I tried to come up with a way as to how I would do that. And joining different committees and having the opportunities to go different places, meet different people. We have a leadership academy with Durham County. We also have the Leadership Institute with NCLA. So that's one way to network and just kind of promote and get the skills that you're looking for, and any type of free classes that you can take, or even classes that you might be willing to pay for yourself. That way you have that under your belt. I just think that's one way to kind of get the skills, or at least have the credentials to say, hey, I have exposure to this. I know a little bit about it. But like Brian said, really having the opportunity to hands-on, be able to apply what you've learned, because you can read about it all day and take classes, but until you actually get in there and have to apply what you've learned, that's where you're going to get your real experience.
And what Stephanie was saying, I'll piggyback off of that. Even if you're not in a leadership role and you're a leader, just go with it. It doesn't matter whether you have that title or not.
Exactly.
If you can do the job and you're willing to do it or want to do it, just prove to them that you're this person and I can do this. Just
Absolutely.
do it.
And you don't have to be in an actual position, like Claudia said, because I wasn't in a position, but I was on different committees, and people had the opportunity to work with me on those committees, and they knew what type of person I was, and they knew I was a hard worker. So that was one way for them to get to know me and know what I could do. I wasn't necessarily in the library working, but I was working on these committees doing different things. And so people were pulling me, be on this committee, on this committee. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm on every committee. I have to pull back, but it was a good, that was a testament to what I could do. And, I did love my job, and I was the person to volunteer to stay late or come in early if I needed to, or, just go the extra mile, because I just enjoy what I was doing. But, so it came across in my work.
We do have a chat question that I can read out. Do you think there are more opportunities when working at smaller libraries in terms of moving up versus larger libraries, or working or living in bigger cities with more conversation or competition? And she's asking because they moved from a larger city, DC, to a smaller city. And again, there seems to be opportunities all over North Carolina, but they seem like more lateral moves than upward moves.
I wouldn't really know, because I didn't have a lot of experience I started out in the academic library, but I transferred over to public. I feel like whenever you're working, I think the government is tricky regardless. So if you're in an academic library, there might not be a lot of opportunity for growth, if that's what she's asking. I don't know. Do you guys want to jump in? And as far as a larger system, I think Brian probably would have more experience because he's moved around more than I have, with knowing what the opportunities look like in larger systems compared to smaller systems.
I think if I would have stayed in Randolph County, I believe I would have moved on quicker or faster, because it was a smaller library, and I would probably be assistant director right now, because I was asked to come in and interview for that position when it became open, but I was in Durham County and I wanted to stay with Durham County because one, I live in Durham, and then two, I like a bigger library system because there's more opportunity opposed to a smaller library system. But Brian may have a different intake on that.
Yeah, I think that when you are able to move then you may have greater opportunities. Like I said, I was already married and had kids and had a house and was established. So I was less like, that's not what I wanted to do. I felt established and I wanted to stay put until my kids got older. And, you know, I was just having this conversation this week with, you know, well, now my kids are almost out of school, so I'm more open to being able to move to a different system if the opportunity presents itself. So it's just about what you're willing to do.
Okay.
So I'd like to say two things. I agree with Stephanie in that so much of it is about what you're willing to do and able to do, and what your life circumstances, you know, will allow for, and, you know, and making sure that, you know, you're present within the moments and appreciating the moments, and the opportunities, you know, that those moments bring. Stephanie, you and I actually had that in common. When I enrolled, you know, in fact, I did my bachelor's, and both my my graduate, I guess my first master's degree, and I'm currently working on the second. All of those with the attachments of, you know, a wife and children, and they also accompanied me on the various moves that I've made in each of those states. So I've been in the profession for about a little more than 10 years, and I've been married for just about 13. And so I can identify with that. And you do have to make very strategic moves, and you have to make sure that they do complement your family's circumstances. To respond to that person's particular question about, you know, smaller libraries versus larger libraries. So here's what I will say. I think that the profession, and I'm going to kind of just, you know, speak about all of this very transparently. So I think within the profession, you know, we have a lot of tenured people, be it in smaller libraries or in larger libraries. I don't know of a library system that doesn't have, you know, staff who has been within that organization or within that department for 15, 20, 30, and in some instances, maybe even 40 or more years. Like, I think that's inherent, and that's like innately like what libraries present as institutions and as a profession, as a field. You know, people enter a lot of times as second careers, and, you know, they are not moving, you know, they are not quick to abandon those posts unless opportunities of promotion come along, for promotion come along. And so I think, you know, it's be it in a smaller system or a larger system, you know, there's going to be opportunities in either, but it's going to be about your being present, being a contributing member, not being comfortable with the status quo, not being caught up in cliquish behavior or silos, and being a part of the greater organization. And so the extent to, you know, which, like, it is what it's what you make it. And so when you have those opportunities that Stephanie alluded to earlier to serve on committees or different task force within your agency, within your library system, you know, then to what extent are you leveraging those opportunities, right? And then also, what opportunities are you choosing to take on? You know, do those things that are, I would recommend anyway, that we do those things that are most enjoyable or pleasant or speak to us most naturally, because those are the situations and the areas where we'll rise. You know, if I had been asked earlier on in my profession to be on, say, you know, an assessment committee or an evaluation committee, well, that wasn't something that was, you know, that it didn't speak to me at the time. And so, you know, I probably would have squandered or, you know, fell short in that capacity or with that opportunity. But one of the first opportunities that I had to participate in an internal system-wide team or committee was, you know, teen services. And at the time, that was something that I was very passionate about, because as I shared earlier, I was, you know, having kids, and, you know, I knew that at some point they'd become teens. And so one of the things that was really important to me was to, you know, stay plugged into what moved and mattered to that audience. And so, I got on that committee, and, I was very active contributor, and, and that allowed me to, kind of showcase some talents or some skills that I think are transferable. And so, to other projects or other tasks or even other positions. And so, again, that goes back to being present in the moment, being very mindful about what opportunities and then, I take on, or what projects I take on or get involved in. And letting, as Stephanie and Claudia both suggested, letting the work speak for itself. But I don't know that really, be it small or large, I think opportunities are going to come along regardless of the size of the library system. And you just have to be, prepared for, and particularly if it's an internal, position, a position comes open within an organization that you're already a part of, you have to be mindful of the fact that the interview process didn't begin when the posting came out, right? The interview process began, moons ago, right? so you have to be mindful of that in order to continue to position yourself for upward mobility if that's what you're, interested in.
All right. Jewel, do we have any more chat questions?
Yes, we've got two. So the first, I'm currently a library director in New York, and I'm moving to North Carolina near Asheville. I don't want to work full-time anymore. What would you suggest for job searching for part-time positions?
For me, I would say look at the state library's website. That's always a good place to start. They have jobs, positions, or listings, full-time, part-time, and all sorts of librarian positions on state library's website.
I mean, as a library director, I would just ask, is that something, like, what level are you willing to work part-time? I guess moving from library director to a part-time position would be more like paraprofessional, you think?
I would think you would also probably want to be open to volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your resume came across, and I'm going to pretend that I don't see the chat box and the name, because certainly I don't want to communicate that, my organization or I would have any biases towards people's work experience. But what I will say is that if I were to see any resume or an application that would come across for a part-time position, and that person had experiences and knowledge that extends far beyond what I'm expecting or hoping that part-time person or position to contribute to the organization, then I am going to be a little skeptical or wondering whether or not they are simply coming in to get their foot in the door. And so I can't really rely on or expect them to stay in that part-time position. And I might also wonder what level of satisfaction or fulfillment they themselves would get out of that position. Right. And so that's just kind of hopefully sharing with you from the perspective of the organization what they might be looking for. And so in that way, or in that regard, one thing that I think would balance that out is if you first volunteered in the libraries in Asheville, or whatever city or community you're going to be moving to, because that, I think, would show yourself as being a person who is really, how they say, I love this work so much I ought to do it for free. Okay, well, go do it for free, because otherwise people are going to, be very skeptical of your true interest in remaining in a part-time position. Mm-hmm. And so if you're most interested in getting your foot in the door, well, go get your foot in the door as a volunteer, and then, you'll show your work ethic, you'll show your commitment to whatever department or organization. And then, when you apply for any opportunities that come open in that area, they'll be able to vouch for your commitment as a volunteer, and that'll transfer into maybe an employment offer.
Well, I know here in Durham County, we do have substitutes, and basically the substitutes work like substitute teachers. So if we have staff that are out, or we have a need or a gap, then we have substitutes that come in and fill in and work the desk for us. So I don't know if that is an opportunity that other systems have, but that is a part-time position that Durham County does hire for. So that will work perfectly for someone who's retired and has the library experience and just, wants something to do. That's like the perfect. I said, when I retire, that's what I'm gonna do, become a substitute. So.
Under chat too, someone also suggested community colleges often have part-time positions as well, so that might be an option, especially if you're working, willing to work nights and weekends. The second question, for those of you who have had the chance to work directly with interns, do you have any tips or advice on how to make their experiences extremely meaningful?
Yeah, I'll speak real briefly on that. I think it's important that they communicate, they being the interns, communicate to us what their goals or objectives are. What areas they want to develop, and then you can, align or assign them tasks or projects that align with those objectives. I think that's, kind of what we've always done here in Greensboro. So much so, that they literally have to send us, I don't want to call it an essay, but it's like a statement of purpose for what it is that they believe that the internship opportunity will do for them, and what their interests are beyond that internship.
Let me jump in right quick, and I'm just going to make this quick statement before we move on to the next question. I'll speak from the intern's perspective because, I didn't have any opportunities, like none of the big opportunities when I was in grad school to intern. And I had to network and my way into an internship. I did a lot of volunteering and talking to people that I wanted to, people in the field that I wanted to mimic in my career. So, that networking and interning turned into something that eventually became financial. But I mean, as an intern, you just have to have the mindset that, this is the time that you're probably going to get the most honest advice from someone who's working in the field, because of the position you're in, you're not their coworker or they're on the same level, so they're a little more willing to share information that you or questions that you may have. So I would say from the intern perspective, ask as many questions as you can about the field and just turn it into a time to really dig in and do some research about the field that you're going into. With that being said, let's move on to the third question. What were some of the difficulties that you faced in your career?
Like I said before, some of the challenges that I faced were having a degree, wanting to move to a professional position from a paraprofessional. And basically what I did to overcome that was, like I said, volunteer on committees. So I just started getting on committees, and that way I could network within my organization, and other people within the organization had the opportunity to work with me to kind of see what kind of personality I had, how I worked. And they got to know me as a person, so that when those positions do become available, they have a good feel for who I am and how I work. So that's how I was able to overcome that, just feeling like, oh, I want a promotion, but I don't necessarily know how to go about getting a promotion. And so then I started looking for leadership opportunities that would help promote me to where I was trying to go. And like Claudia said earlier, just taking advantage of what is out there and being a leader in any position that you're in. You don't necessarily have to have a title to be able to run a successful program and take charge and do a good job at that program, or project that you're working on as a group. You don't have to be a manager to be able to do that. You can manage your volunteers that are in the library, or manage a group of students that come in, or, manage your tutors. So it just depends on what capacity, what type of library you're in. But there are always opportunities for you to step forward and show that you can do the job if you really want to do it. But I think, deciding what I wanted to do and what area I wanted to work in and how to get there, that was the biggest challenge. So once I sat down and made that very conscious decision, thought about it, what is it that I really want to do and what direction do I want to go in? Once I did that, then I was able to start working towards that.
For me, one of the challenges that I sometimes tend to be the only librarian that speaks Spanish and fluently. And sometimes I feel like I need to be in one position, like I need to be a reference librarian in order to help any of the Latino community or Latina community that comes in order for me to help them out. Because again, I am the only librarian that speaks Spanish fluently. And I've tried to tell myself that it's okay that for me to move on into wanting to be either a branch manager or something else within the library, because hopefully we will have more people that are fluently speaking Spanish that we can hire. In North Carolina, it seems like we don't have that many Latino librarians. And hopefully one day we will, or have other people who can speak Spanish. For me, that's a challenge. And it makes me feel bad, because it's like, I want to help my community and I need to be present. But then again, it's like, okay, Claudia, you also need to move on professionally, because I can't just stay in one place. I need to, keep moving on.
Some of the more challenging things that I've experienced in libraries have to do with fit and organizational culture, some of which, or in some instances, these were things that, because of being assistant director or deputy director as I am now, I was able to, directly influence. And then there were some things that I just had to kind of learn and become a part of, and be able to kind of assess whether or not it was a fit or a healthy culture or environment for me. I think that's a difficulty or challenge, because so often when we are pursuing opportunities, we're just like, we're focused on the bottom line, right? Particularly if we're, unemployed at a particular time, or if we're transitioning, or even leaving an environment or organization that wasn't a fit, then we're focused on, finding the next. But I think you also have to be intentional about making sure that the next is, the best. So make your next move your best move, as they say. So that's always been a difficulty. I think another challenge for me, or difficulty, has been, and I don't want to call it a difficulty. I would just say an ongoing process has been, developing, continuously developing myself, be it with, my knowledge and understanding of the trajectory libraries are headed in, my knowledge and understanding of the community that I'm serving, my knowledge and understanding of myself, and the different changes, things that I'm experiencing, and how, I'm responding to and coping to these things. All of these things, I think, have, factored in and been things that I've had to grapple with, or, address and improve on throughout my career. I could get specifics, but it's 11:42 and we got like 3 or 4 questions.
Like I said, we wanted to get you guys to get the conversation going, and the chat room has jumped in. So hey, as long as the conversation's flowing, if we don't get to the end of these questions, by the end of the time, we've at least, put some good information out there. So with that being said, let's move on to question 4. What has been your greatest triumphs in your career?
I think I've had many triumphs in my career. I think, it depends on what you consider to be a success. I think that's, there are small things that happen that I feel very triumphant about. If I'm able to help get something accomplished, or, having a seat at the table. That was one of the things that Claudia talked about, having reservations at one point in time as far as, serving the community, but you also want to be in a position where you can be that voice to be able to bring more people in so that they can have the opportunity to serve the community as well. You want to have that seat at the table. So I think, that's a triumph in itself, to be in a position to be able to do that. So I think, I do celebrate the small successes as well as the big ones, and I count it all a blessing. I'm just thankful to be in a position. I am truly doing something that I enjoy doing. Like, I love my job. And I remember saying that one time, my brother was like, "You really love your job?" I was like, "I love my job."
Love my job when I can do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love the part I love about the public library is the service aspect of it. And I didn't realize that about myself until I got into the job and got out there and was helping people. I mean, when people come back and say, "Oh, I got a job because you helped me do my resume," or, I was able to do this, or I got the apartment, or whatever, I'm like, that makes me very happy, and it makes me feel very successful because I was able to help them achieve something, or they were able to get in school, or they finished their FAFSA application or something, because I was able to sit there and walk them through it and kind of hold their hand. So, I understand those types of experiences. I mean, I think one of the biggest triumphs for me is being a branch manager right now. I don't even know if that's something that I saw for myself 5 or 10 years ago, but here I am, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I try to personally, give that opportunity or extend that opportunity to as many people who really truly want it. And I try to encourage people. That's my biggest thing, encouraging people to go after what they want to do and what makes them happy. Like Brian says, you gotta have a inner peace. If you want to get up and do it every day, you need to enjoy what you're doing and be happy with it. If you're not satisfied, then you need to, look at, reevaluate.
And also do things, I'm sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to cut you off. Also do things that you're real passionate about and believe in it. And always remember, your name is going to be in whatever you do, programming, whatever you're reaching out to, your name is going to be on that presentation, on that program. For me, if my name's going to be on there, I need to make sure that I am just bringing either my A game, or I make sure that everything's on there. One of the things for me is we had our first drag queen story time like 2 weeks ago. And this, for me, it's like, okay, my name's going to be on this. So we are going to make sure that, we just reach out to the community that we need to reach out to, just be passionate about what you do. Yeah. And if you're not, then I'm sorry to say this, but maybe you're in the wrong field. You don't need to be here.
Right. You got to be passionate. You got to be focused, find your focus.
Yeah. And always remember that for me, it's like, I'm not doing this to get the attention. I'm doing this because I want to reach out to certain people and demographics that do not come to the library, do not have access to the information. It's like I could be applying for grants and doing all this bunch of stuff, but it's like, to me, that's not what I want to do. My passion is differently, and it's okay if you want to do that, if you want to apply for grants or if you want to do something else within the library. But just remember, you need to have that passion and that positive attitude and that drive, because that's what's going to get you also with the connections with the other people, and they're going to want to work with you. Trust me on that. They are.
That is true.
I think another one thing for me, the same things that I, kind of spoke about as difficulties in response to question number 3, I would count those same things as, being triumphs, many of them anyway, because, it ultimately led me to where I am, right? And so if I'm here to speak about it today, then, on some level or another, it has influenced and aided me and so therefore I'll count it as a triumph and celebrate those small victories, as Stephanie said. And to put this, I will provide a specific example of this. So there was, I mentioned earlier that I was extended an opportunity to serve on a, team services committee while I was employed with the Richland County Public Library. And, because again, that was something that I was passionate about, I was, really contributing to that teams, that committee's, mission. And I had made a suggestion. And when I made the suggestion, I had also done a lot of the legwork associated with it. And so the purpose behind my suggestion was to, do something very kind of radical, in my mind anyway, at the time, in order to, get to where the teens were. So as opposed to just, interacting with only the teens that came into the library and promoting our services to them, I thought we needed to do something that would take, very visibly and vocally take our messages and services to, where that teen community was. And so at the time, teens were really plugged into the radio, and, that's where they would hear about the different parties that were occurring on the weekend. And so I had proposed that we, get with the radio station to promote a lot of our different programs. And I figured at a minimum, the radio station would be able to, use that as like a public service announcement, right? Because I know that they had those types of requirements that they needed to meet. And so, but through connecting all of the dots and, kind of being the middleman between the radio station and our library's administration, or the radio station's marketing department and the marketing department at Richland County, that was a very challenging experience where I learned a lot about our culture within that library system. But it was also ultimately a really good experience because, we did pull this off, even if only for a, limited or pilot, kind of a time frame. We pulled it off. We got the mayor of that city involved in the effort as well. And so I do think it was a triumph despite some of those challenges. And so, when I sat down on an occasion with the director of the library, kind of following all of that or in the midst of all of it, she told me, make sure that when you are doing, these things and when you're extended these opportunities to kind of help, create, the services and the direction in which our library is going, make sure that you're also being very intentional about, the internal processes and things that are already in place. And so through that challenge of developing this relationship and initiative with the radio station, I landed on what I believe has kind of been a mantra that's kind of guided me, which is, to take risk, but don't go rogue. And so, that's, landing on that has been a triumph because it's really guided a lot of the different projects I've been a part of. And even some of the smaller things, when, somebody will come at me with a real quick idea and it's like that they want to champion or they want to push for it. And I'm like, okay, you can do this. But look to see, what have we, maybe previously done like this? What are the lessons learned from those experiences that will help shape and better communicate what it is you're trying to do now? And so again, just taking risks without going rogue has, kind of been something that I've used to kind of create synergy between those difficult moments and the triumphant moments.
All right. Let's move on to question 5. In your opinion, what is the current state of the library profession in North Carolina? And I know that's kind of a broad question, but I'll say simply, just say it, tell it from your perspective or what you think. What do you think of the current state of the library profession in North Carolina right now?
Yes, I think it's good. The ALA president is from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Stephanie's in North Carolina, Claudia's in North Carolina, Jules in North Carolina, Marcellus is in North Carolina. The young lady who's retiring from DC and will be moving down here to join the ranks of North Carolina libraries is coming to North Carolina. So I think it's good, as long as we continue as a state to stay focused, not even just as a state, but even within our local cities, counties, et cetera, to stay focused on meeting, first identifying and understanding the needs of the community.
That's what I was gonna say.
Right, and then
working. We represent our community,
And then, right, exactly, and working towards meeting those needs. And
right.
I think, the state of the profession and the state of the state, for that matter, will be fine.
I agree. I think we're in good shape.
I concur. North Carolina it's a good place. I will say this, that working for Durham County is also, for me, it's a good place. I'm at a good place right now. I like North Carolina. You've got the mountains and the beaches, right? From one coast to another coast. So yeah, North Carolina is good.
I'm born and raised from North Carolina, so I'm a Carolina girl. So I love it.
Well, I'll interject myself. To me, North Carolina is very library heavy. We have how many library schools? 4 or 5?
Mm-hmm.
So when you come out of library school, and to allude to some of the things that were said earlier about heavily tenured libraries throughout North Carolina, when you come out of library school, that's it's stiff competition if you're trying to stay in this area. So when it comes to libraries, and you look at North Carolina, we're very heavy, and I think that contributes to us having the current ALA president. To me, North Carolina librarians are the best in the United States. That's my opinion. So it's this is North Carolina's a good place to be, to have a library degree, to earn a library degree, and then to put your knowledge and your skills to use in the workplace. So with that being said, if we don't have any more chat questions, we're going to move on to the last question. What is some of the advice that you would like to give to library students and early career librarians?
Well, I would like to say that yes, this area is kind of, I'm not going to say saturated, but like you said, heavily tenured. I feel like if you have the opportunity and if you're able to move around to get the experience, then do it. That's the path that Brian took. You have to do what works best for you and your family. But if you have that opportunity to move and get the experience that you're seeking, then I say take advantage of that. That would be my biggest piece of advice. And like, volunteer until you can get to where it is that you want to be. Get your foot in the door, get that exposure that you need. And one of the things that Claudia mentioned earlier was get a mentor. She had a mentor. And so it's really good to have somebody that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off of, who can give you sound advice.
Get a mentor, network. Don't be scared to network. As librarians, we are put in this stereotype that we're introverts and we don't like to, get outside of our comfort zone. And sometimes that may be true, but at the same time, network. That's important. Be part of professional organizations such as NCLA, ALA. ALA sends a monthly magazine, and it has a lot of great information in it. Read it. Sometimes you'll get ideas from there, or whatever advice you can get from there is good. Go talk to a librarian. I've had people come up to me and be like, "So can you tell me what it's like to be a librarian?" I'm like, "Sure." I've gone out with them, met up with them, drink coffee, and like, this is how it is. This is what you'll be experiencing. And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yes, really." But network, yeah, fun stuff to be a librarian. Keep your eyes out on certain counties if you want to work for either Guilford County or Durham County. Look at their websites for job postings
The
or
state website.
state website. Yeah, just that's what I did.
And I think NCLA has a group, if I'm not mistaken, for paraprofessionals and for students for networking, where they have coffees and different meetups as well.
Yes, I think there's a new member roundtable when you first join. Mr. Hart?
Yeah, so I would I would go back to, one of the things we said at the top of the discussion or webinar was that as much as you possibly can, get both the practical experience and the head knowledge, because those experiences give you opportunities to kind of test your assumptions about the things that you're learning, in the program. In addition to that, I would say expose yourself to as much, books, magazines, as Claudia referenced, from ALA or even PLA or RUSA, whatever specialty or specific aspect of library services you might be interested in. Expose yourself to the publications that come out in relation to that specific area, because under ALA, obviously, we know that there are these different umbrellas. And even under NCLA, there's these different umbrellas. There's the public library section. There's the academic library section, the special library section, etc. So, make sure that you're looped in and aware of the different things that are going on within those sections, because they'll give you more insight in terms of the what the trends are as it relates to that very specific aspect. But then also, even beyond that, I would read books on leadership, management, personal development, all of these different things, because one of the things that is most important, has been most important to me anyway, is diversity of thought and diversity of experience. And so that's what I gained through a lot of those moves, is diversity of experience. But I complement that with exposing myself to different books, different things that are happening in society, because all of those things kind of help you become better prepared to respond to things that are happening in the community, things that might be happening for yourself career-wise. So just diversity of thought, diversity of experience, seek it and benefit from it.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. We did make time for questions between 12 and 12:15. If any of the participants want to send any questions or make any comments at this time, please do so. We'll give them a couple of minutes. Jewel, is there anything that you would like to announce going on with REMCo while we're waiting to see if we're getting any chat questions?
Sure. We have our NCLA upcoming biennial conference, and REMCo has events every single day. We are celebrating youth literature and the Coretta Scott King Awards. We're having pre-conferences on low morale experiences in the library if you need some coping with that. We have sessions on diversity and inclusion initiatives going on throughout North Carolina. And we are doing a special session with Jackie Shelton, North Carolina Poet Laureate. So we are doing big things, and I hope that we all get to see each other and that you find some sessions that interest you. But yeah, that's what we're doing. We've got a busy conference season coming up.
Okay, and since we're talking to 3 road builders right now, can you elaborate on the Road Builders Award?
Oh, sure. Yes, we will be honoring our road builders, which are model ethnic minority librarians in North Carolina. If you know of people who are doing great things, like our panelists, in
Yeah.
North Carolina, we're going to open up the nomination system soon, and we will be awarding them at the wine and cheese reception at the conference. Oh, and I see we have a question that has come up. What's your response to the question, who still uses libraries, or aren't libraries dying? It irks me to get this question as a student because I know the library isn't dying, but I don't feel my responses always communicate how much libraries do for the community.
Libraries are not dying. I don't feel that they are. I feel like we are a very intricate part of any community. I work in the public library, and I know that we serve so many different roles other than just books. We provide so many services and opportunities for people who would not necessarily have the opportunity to experience some of the things that they get to experience through our libraries. And so that would be the response that I would give people, because that's what I say sometimes, but I definitely don't feel that way. One of the things I heard last night at our Board of County Commissioners office is that our library is our community's living room. And so everybody, it's a meeting place. I mean, we provide space, we provide programs, we provide humanities. Like Claudia said, we had a drag queen story time. So you get exposure to different things, you know, kids and adults who may not have had the experience of doing an art project or program, or you know, certain things that you would not normally have access to because of whatever circumstances that you can go to your library and have that experience for free. So no, the library is so much more than books. It's a gateway to the community. So no, the libraries aren't going anywhere, especially the public library. We will always be here.
And usually the people who ask those questions are the ones that don't use the libraries and don't know what's going on with libraries.
Exactly.
So it's like, I'm like, have you visited your library? Have you seen all the programming that we have for kids, teens, and adults? Or even our like other,
Right.
you know, they're the ones who are not using it. So to them, I'd be like, no, public libraries are not dying.
They are not using it, and that's an opportunity for you to say, come on and see what we have, because
Yep.
it's so much. It's so much, and people work so hard to bring that to our community. I mean, constantly working to bring forth all these wonderful programs. And
Yeah. Not just programming, but like also free taxes during tax season, you know.
taxes, what else do we do? We do all kinds
We
of
do early voting for our meeting room spaces. You know, it's like libraries are utilized a lot more than what people, you know, don't know, or certain people who don't use them. Of course, they don't know what's going on. But yeah, like Stephanie said, invite them, bring them in.
Yeah. Oh, Brian, you have anything to add?
I mean, they touched on quite a bit. I would just add that I shared within the chat a link to a New York Times article titled "To Restore Civil Society, Start with the Library." It talks about the library being a critical or crucial institution that is, very vital to the vibrancy and the education of the communities in which they're situated. And so, again, it's titled "To Restore Civil Society, Start with the Library." And so I'm hoping that that'll help India answer the question when people approach her about, who still uses the libraries or aren't libraries dying, tell her it's just the opposite. In fact, if you want the community, the city, the county, whomever to continue to thrive, then what you need to do is actually pour into the library so that it can continue to be the institution that it is, not just for them, because maybe they themselves not have as much of a use for it, but they should support it for the greater good, because there are people in and around our communities all of the time who do need the services. And, quite frankly, as we interact with one another, I would much rather be interacting with somebody who has access to a tool like the library that can help better position them, because again, it is the great equalizer, as opposed to dealing with or interacting with somebody who is hungry and has no outlet, right? Because that could be, that could lead to some other things. And so the library is an institution that we should all uplift. It is certainly alive and well. And I just wanted to share that article with the young lady, because you're faced with that kind of contention, then you want to have some resources to throw back at them.
And just keep in mind the fifth law of the library, that the library is an organism and is always changing. The organism is always changing and going through changes. Now, the library may not look like it looks in 2019, like it will look in 2039, but it's still going to be here in maybe in a different capacity, but it's not going anywhere, because as Stephanie said, it's an intricate part of the community. So always keep the fifth law of library science in your mind, that it's an organism that's always changing. Let's see, we still got a couple of minutes. Do we have any more questions from the chat room?
Can I just say something real quickly?
Yes.
I may be old school, but I'm going to say it anyways. Always dress for the job that you want. I have interviewed, and I've seen my interviewees come in, and they come in like they're ready to go meet their best friend for a lunch date. Like I said, I may be old school, but if you are a professional, dress like a professional. That will go a long way. Trust me on that one. I know we are in this business casual sometimes, where we can just wear jeans and a nice top, but remember, as a professional, always dress for the job that you want.
I totally agree with Claudia, and like she said, that might be old school, but like I said, my first job was in an academic library and I was trained that way. So they told me anytime I went out to represent the library for any event, for any committee, that I needed to dress professionally. And so it's always best to be overdressed than underdressed. As a manager, we are allowed to wear jeans, but most days I come in here and I'm dressed professionally, because I never know who I'm going to encounter throughout my day or who I have to interact with. So I totally agree. Even when I've always dressed for the job that you want. And Claudia is absolutely right. Even if you can't afford to go out and buy suits, we don't necessarily wear suits, but you can buy one or two items that look professional that you can interchange, and nobody would ever know you're wearing the same thing. So a good pair of blue pants, a good pair of black pants, and a good pair of gray pants and a nice top will take you a long way, because it looks pulled together, it looks professional, and you can really truly fake it till you make it.
Well, and to piggyback off that, for if any gentlemen are listening, or if you want to refer any gentlemen to a good book that advises men on how to dress or put outfits together, look for Esquire's book on A Book of Style. It is very handy and walks you through putting patterns and what colors go together and what shoes not to wear with this, and it helps with timeless style. So
Yeah.
But
a white shirt is timeless, is not a fad. It will never go out.
Right.
And I mean, you can put that with skirt, pants, jeans, anything, and it's gonna look good. So you're right. You don't have to be a fashionista to be able to dress nicely and professionally, but you definitely want to, because people do judge you on your appearance. Yep. And they do take you more seriously when you dress the part.
Since we're on the topic of wardrobe, I just want to say, that I would add that, because I agree with everything that you all have said. I would add that it is important to be and remain comfortable in who you are and in how you present yourself. Not comfortable as in like, sweats and, that kind of thing, because I totally agree with what Claudia and Stephanie and Marcellus have said. I also just want to emphasize, to find your style, because when you're in a meeting, and you don't want to feel uncomfortable in that meeting. You want to still be professional, but you don't want to be uncomfortable, because that can too send you into a space where you're, questioning yourself, and you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I hope that is, I hope I'm making sense. But I would just, in addition to being professional, and having a professional wardrobe, make sure that it is one that complements and speaks to who you are. Because, when you're hired by a library, you're hired to be who you are. There was something in the course of that interview,
Right.
or that interview process, that set you apart from the other candidates. And so that's why you were brought on board. And so in the process of being your best professional self, make sure that you don't lose sight of yourself, right?
That makes sense. Like, keep your identity and keep your flair. I agree with Brian, and I've advised others. If you see something, because a lot of times people say, "Well, I don't have the money." Like this one lady, she found a cute little dress that was from Old Navy, and I was like, okay, that's perfect. And you can wear that in the winter, and you can wear it in the summer. It's like you can put a jacket or a cardigan over it, and it fit her body type, and it was inexpensive. So she went back and got some in different colors. So, yeah, you want to keep your own identity and have your flair and your personality be able to shine through your clothes, but you do want to, dress the part as well.
All right. I don't think we got any more questions, and I'm glad I like where the discussion went at the end, because that was unexpected, and that's what we wanted, to keep the conversation open. So if all hearts and minds are clear, I want to thank my illustrious panel. I'm going to continue to use illustrious, powerful, smart, because my thing is to try to feed into people positively whenever I see them, or, whenever we break bread. So my illustrious panel of Claudia, Brian, and Stephanie, these are people I admire and look up to. So
Thank you.
Well, that's humbling, and I appreciate the compliments. Appreciate being invited to participate and be a part of the panel. I definitely use the word humbling very intentionally, not only because I was humbled by it and do appreciate that, but I think having a humble mindset and a humble spirit is also necessary for effective library service, and necessary for positioning yourself for other opportunities. Because while we all appreciate good leaders, we also appreciate early adopters and good followers as well. And so stay humble, my friends.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, that concludes our webinar for today. I hope the participants enjoyed it. If you have the opportunities, please reach out to our panel, reach out to Jewel and myself. If you're not a part of NCLA or REMCo, please join. We need your energy. We need your positivity. We need your personality. We need good people, and just please feel welcome to join. Then, Jewel, you have anything to add before we go?
Nope, I'm just glad everybody came out. Thank you so much to our panelists and our participants.